Hello, you're watching Proactive. I'm joined by Melissa Sturgis, the CEO of Ananda Developments. Melissa, very good to speak with you this morning. You seem to be making good progress at the company, and that's reflecting in your share price. Tell us what's going on.
Thanks, Stephen. Good to chat. Good to speak to you guys as always. Yeah, I think the last few months there's been some change in sentiment generally in small caps, which maybe we speak about a little bit later. But generally, from our perspective, I think we're seeing a greater understanding of what we're trying to do with CBD-based drugs. There's been some movement in the over-the-counter space where it's harder to get over-the-counter CBD-based formulations to be made available, and the dosage requirements of those has got a lot stricter. So I think very much in the UK, being a very pharmaceutical-driven country, there's a greater understanding now that the path to CBD medicines is through standard regulatory pathway, MHRA licensing, and get NICE to approve the health economics and the funding of the drug, and get CBD-based drugs available on the NHS. That's really the big prize. And I think that what's been happening in the space generally means that there's a greater understanding that that's the way to do it, and that our view is that we're leading in this area.
Do you think investors are also drawing a distinction between over-the-counter remedies that you can buy at pharmacies and those that are being developed by companies such as Ananda Developments, Melissa?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, and that's reflected in these two phase 2 clinical trials that we've got confirmed. One into SIPA and chemotherapy-induced pain, and the other into endometriosis. Both of those really initiated by clinicians who are dealing with patients who have endometriosis and have chemotherapy-induced pain, who've actually come to them and said, "We're using over-the-counter products. We think they're helpful, but why can't you prescribe something?" And so these clinicians have said, okay, we need to do some proper trials and get a licensed drug so that we understand exactly what dose, we understand exactly what's in the formulation, and that the MHRA is happy to give a license for these drugs for these particular conditions. So absolutely what's going on in the over-the-counter space, I think, is really helpful for us.
Melissa, it sounds like quite an arduous process to get these drugs on the NHS, and you're undertaking that. So you're pioneers in that space through the trials that you're conducting in conjunction with the University of Edinburgh. Do you see an end goal here?
Yeah, the end goal is, well, if you think about patients, it's help patients. And our little internal mantra is that these drugs should be available to everyone who needs them, not just those who can afford them. And for shareholders, we all know in the pharma space, the big returns come from getting licensed drugs available to be prescribed. So in terms of creating value for shareholders, that's where the big prize is also. So you just simply have to do the work. The nice thing about using CBD-based drugs is that CBD is a known molecule. It is considered safe. So putting it into our own novel formulations and going through the clinical trial pathway with our particular drugs means that we don't always have to do as much preclinical in vivo, in test tube type work as does happen with some new molecules. So we can sort of fast track the first bit of work a little bit and move straight into dosing patients. And so that sort of means that we can get moving faster, gets us to the end goal a bit faster, but the prize is still very, very big.
And you're also broadening your portfolio, Melissa. We spoke recently about the recent positive results from the MRX1 preclinical study using mice. So you're expanding at the same time.
Yeah, I suppose because we know that CBD has many modes of action, so it's very anti-inflammatory and works on many of the inflammatory pathways in the body, and also on other key receptors around the immune system. So for us to have trials across a range of indications for which we think CBD can be turned into a licensed drug is pretty important. So it's getting some breadth in the portfolio, but never forgetting the depth, because getting to a licensed drug is obviously where the big prize is. The mice study has been pretty incredible. I mean, basically, it showed that a mouse with HFpEF, which is a heavy and large ventricle in the heart, administering MRX1 means that the heart shrunk back to its normal size and normal weight. So actually seeing MRX1 working in mice in such an incredible way was really, really very encouraging for us. And we will continue this work that we're doing on that heart indication.
Well, you're getting breadth to your portfolio, or more breadth to your portfolio. You're also adding more gravitas at the top structures, Melissa. So you've appointed a scientific advisory board that's going to be chaired by Clive Page, one of your directors. And you've also appointed Trevor Jones and Cherry Wainwright. So getting some heavy hitters in there at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's an important part of building Ananda into something sensible and something that looks like a proper pharmaceutical company. So we've very much made the transition, and this is Clive talks to me about this all the time, making the transition from discovery to development. So we're past the ideas bit now, and now we're really developing these drugs. And so we need that scientific heft, which we get from Cherry Wainwright. She's been very much the driving force behind the HFpEF trials. She's the incoming chair of the British Pharmacological Society. So has that sort of rigor that she brings to bear on our activities. Professor Trevor Jones, very well known. He was head of R&D at Wellcome Trust, so has developed many drugs right through from the clinic, right through to patients. So he keeps us very much on the straight and narrow in terms of the regulatory pathway and what we need to do to get these drugs into the NHS and into patients as quickly as possible. So those two additions, with obviously Clive coming in, who's on the main board as well. He was the founding chairman and founding partner of Verona Pharmaceuticals, which was an AIM listed. It was actually reversed into an AIM shell in 2006 and is now NASDAQ quoted plus $1 billion market cap company that's just had FDA drug approval for an anti-inflammatory drug. So I think that also symbolizes and signifies to shareholders and potential shareholders that we've got the grunt as well as the ideas now.
Melissa, the sort of milestones that those investors and shareholders should be looking out for?
Progress in our clinical trials. So first patient, first dose, further work on the mouse study, and we will have some more indications that we will add to the portfolio where, as I said, we want a little bit more breadth, but it won't go much further, and then just keep focusing on pushing through these timelines to get to a licensed drug.
Melissa, I hope you'll keep us posted on any progress. Thank you very much for speaking with us today.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Melissa Sturgis, CEO of Ananda Developments.